What's the make
So,
what's the makeup of the audience today?
well, we have about 1,000 people that enrolled, a little bit more, I guess, all around the globe, different levels in the university, like faculty, students, deans, etc. So it's a really mix. And we have different time zones, so we split it in I think 3 different time zones. So I'm not sure like how many we have right now. I think looks like A2, A3 participants. We just ended the opening session, so uh, we should be ready really soon. But it's a mix, Andrew. So it's a
Okay,
mix.
thank you.
Hi, Omid.
Hi,
Hi.
good to see you all.
Well, I think we are live. Just give 1 more minute so people can transition from the other session.
Hi.
I love that people.
Okay, everyone. People coming up. So good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are on the world. I can see many of you, but I'm sure if I would see some familiar faces around here, and I will see on the chat some greetings. So welcome, welcome. My name is Gustavo Loyola. I was chapter chair for Latin America and the Caribbean a couple of years ago, and I'm currently working at the Secretariat, leading the Champions Group and also supporting the SIP report transition process through Prime Commons. So really good to see you all around here. I know some of you have been here for a few hours, you're tired in some cases. Some of you are just joining us. So I really appreciate your commitment and your audience for the session that we discuss leadership with purpose, creating societal impact. I also would like to remind you that we have a live translation available in, I guess, 6 different languages. You can activate this option if needed. So just take a look on your screen. You can also feel free to use the chat for your questions as we plan to have some time for this during the session, okay? Well, today we have 4 superstars from the Responsible Managed Education ecosystem. So I'm really happy to welcome Omid Yashari, our Senior Advisor of Prime, Stephanie Bryant, Executive Vice President and Global Chief Accreditation Officer from AACSP, Alphonse Soquet, Director for Quality Service and Equis at EFMD Global, and Andrew Main Wilson, CEO from EMBA and BGA. Thank you all for being here today. Well, earlier today in our opening session, Omid and Sandra mentioned about the urgency on the SDGs and reinforcing that. And I would like to start quoting the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in some remarks he did during the launch of Sustainable Development Goals Progress Report almost a year ago. He said that halfway to the deadline for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we are leaving more than half of the world behind. The report shows that just 15% of Sustainable Development Goals targets are on track. Progress on 50% is weak and insufficient. and about 30% are stagnated or in regressive. So unless we act right now, the 2030 agenda will become an epitaph for a world that might have been. It's really important to note that we are facing multiple challenges and experience different global crises in the past few years. The pandemics, climate change, inequalities, poverty, food insecurity, different conflicts all around the world, and etc. And I see that science, innovation, and technology are key factors in accelerating progress towards the SDGs, so that by 2030, we can feel we have done our utmost. Multi-stakeholder partnerships are extremely necessary, whether involving civil society, governments, the private sector, academia. Each of these sectors has an important role to play. Academia, including all of us as business schools, have a clear role in shaping leadership. It really matters what we teach in the classroom, how we teach, and why we teach, how we impact our surroundings, and how we collaborate to change the reality. All these are footprints that we leave in society. It's our societal impact. So for today, I prepared a couple of questions, and I would right now open the conversation with direct questions to Stefan Bryan from ASSB. Thanks for being here. And my question is like, how has your organization been collaborating to support business schools in generating impact for society? And could you also bring in and talk about the motivations for doing so?
Sure. Gustavo, thanks so much for that introduction, and thanks to all of my esteemed colleagues who are here on the stage. It's really a joy to see us work together. As I was thinking about this session, it occurs to me that I think we have so much more that unites us than divides us, and our power really is in our collective efforts. So to that point, one of the things that we're doing at AUCSB, of course, we have a very heavy emphasis on societal impact and leading with purpose that comes out of the 2020 accreditation standards. So when I first we kind of rolled out the 2020 standards and we had this societal impact imperative, we weren't very prescriptive about how to do it. We wanted to see how schools did it themselves and how they, what they came up with, as opposed to us saying, here's a template, follow this template. And what was interesting was the number one question that I encountered as I traveled around the world was how to measure societal impact. People, I think, have their own ideas of what is societal impact, basically things that you're doing to improve the environment, the economy, or people's lives, but they did not understand the need to have a strategically focused effort with societal impact. And so that's really been the learning, I think, over the last 4 years for us, is how to answer that question of measuring your impact. So I'll just give you a couple of nuggets that I think really help to illuminate that topic. And here's what I saw. People are doing many, many, many things, and they're very proud of the activities they're doing. And as I would go around and talk to schools, they would have long lists of things they were doing, but the activities were not connected. So what became obvious is the need to have a strategically focused societal impact effort. So that means that you decide what you want your impact to be, and then you do the activities that support what you desire to do. Not the activity, you don't lead with activities. And so that is why people were having so much trouble coming up with KPIs and ways to measure that. So the practical takeaway I would like to leave with the audience, our learning, we will share with you as well, is really the key is sort of writing down an impact statement, writing down what you want to do. So what is it you want to do? Like if you can state that very succinctly, we want to increase employability, of a certain population. You can articulate that. That is number one. So you lead with that strategy. Then you say, who do you want to impact? How will you impact? And that's where the activities come in. And then how will you measure that? And the KPIs tie back to what is it you want to do. If you want to increase employability, then your measurement of KPIs should be, are we increasing employability? But people were stuck in that midsection of activities, and they were trying to measure activities without tying it back to strategy. So that's really the key. And then I'll just sort of close my opening comments with saying we have also really encouraged the use of AI for schools to kind of help think about and brainstorm this stuff. So now we have these amazing tools of AI that we don't have to start with a blank sheet of paper. You can use these tools to help you brainstorm what kinds of activities would support the thing you want to do and ideas on KPIs. So that's, I think, what our big learning has been over the past 4 years, is that it's really important not just to do things, but to connect them to a strategy, be able to articulate what you want to do. And if you can do that, then you will be able to measure and have tangible measures of success.
That's great, Stephanie. And I'd also like to highlight something that you mentioned, like this strategic focus in society impact and also in measuring that. And it really aligns, for example, with the SDG discussion, because, for example, the SDGs launched in 2015. Right after that, everyone was talking about the SDGs and saying they're doing multiple things about it, etc., in academia, in private sector, in governmental level, etc. So a bunch of beautiful actions about the topic, but when we go and look to the goals itself and the targets and how we advance it, the results are really minimal. So in the end, we're not generating true impact. We are doing nice things, and that's good, but we're not like changing or impact the society in a proper way. So I really like your approach and really, okay, so let's think about it. Let's measure it. Let's understand the impact you're generating, and of course, connect it to your own reality, your own context, your own capabilities on the organization. So I think this is really important. It's something that we as Prime, for example, through the SIP reports and the Prime Commons now, we're bringing this structured way to understand how to implement Prime principles, how to collaborate on the SDGs. And in the end, we can see a good story, but we can also see how we really generate impact, like how we are generating the societal impact. So really great for your insights and your experience and what you're seeing around about the field. I know you have like this global vision traveling around the world, so I think would be really useful for our audience.
Yeah, and I will say, Gustavo, the ACSB does not require schools to use the framework of the SDGs, but 99% of our schools last year did in terms of reporting out their activities. So they're using the nomenclature in the SDGs, and that helps us to be able to aggregate and tell a collective story across all of our accredited schools, because what we really want to do is unify across all of our schools, and we want to bring together schools that are working in like areas and further amplify those efforts. So that's really what we're trying to do, and it will take time to do that, but I'm encouraged. And then the other thing I'll say is people kind of started out this 2020 journey, and we would get the reports, accreditation reports, and they would have all 17 SDGs listed, and they would say what they're doing in all 17 SDGs. And so we would try to help them understand that it's not about the number of SDGs you're working in. It's what is it you want to do? If you want to make an impact, like focus your efforts. So all learnings for us as well.
That's great. That's great. And I will turn my question also to Alphonse, okay, from Equus, because I will quote here something that I saw on Equus website that says that Equus explore multiple stakeholder perspectives to generate meaningful societal impact through the management education. I think this meaningful societal impact is really connected on what we are talking about here. So could you please explain a little bit what meaningful societal impact means in your vision?
Yes, well, I'll try, because when speaking about societal impact is broad enough to say everything has societal impact, and any academic institution has societal impact, just by the mere fact of you graduating students or you're having some sort of research, that etc. So the first thing actually to me would be to state that each school has its own priorities. That's the first thing, and priorities are settled mostly because of the context. and we are very much context dependent. So I was just reading someone from a Krok business school from Ukraine, and we had a specific dialogue with that specific school. I don't remember the name of the representative. I would be very sure that the kind of societal impact that they're trying to achieve would be very different from the one of my school, or my former school in Barcelona, or your school, Gustavo, in Curitiba, for example. So each school has its own priorities, first thing. Second, and in this actually we are somehow aligned with what Stephanie said before, the question is really, to what extent do you want to achieve certain things? How do you make your choices? How do you set up your priorities? And this is where there's different stakeholders come in. I mean, it may be a matter of connecting with specific types of organization, serving specific clusters of students. So I'm thinking here about the second opportunities, degrees, for example, in specific countries. So there's an immense variety of ways whereby schools can show or can actually comply with their own initial purpose of having a good impact. Now, having said this, the importance that what we can help schools, and I'm thinking this in this regard from an accreditation standpoint, is that we provide advice. Because it's accreditations, at least from the standpoint of EQUIS, it's a combination of, okay, certification, certain things, but there's also a consultancy process here. And when you put together a group of people actually aligned with the school, and you can help that school to think better what would be the best possible ways to achieve their own goals. This is something that we really bet on. And the other thing, when we look at a school in terms, looking at the societal impact, we ask the school 4 things. First is, how do you manage yourself? How do you manage yourself? I mean, to what extent you're becoming an exemplar in the way you're dealing with your own stakeholders internally, faculty, staff, etc. Second is, to what extent your education processes. You mentioned, Gustavo, before, it's about the how. How do you go about the how, the learning, the teaching, etc. Third thing would be, to what extent do you produce or you focus on the right kind of research or research that has specific link with some societal challenges. That would be the third thing. And in here, I would quote, we are very fascinated with AI at these days. And of course, AI is a great tool. But I think that academic institutions should also be looking a little bit beyond that and see what kind of side effects these could have. There's enough. So that academic part related to societal impact should be there as well. And the last thing, we believe that business schools are a little bit of an exemplar for society. So they can become a little bit of an activist. The fact that certain business schools do certain things, I'm thinking of past years with, I think it was Columbia Business School that had a couple of institutes that were very well known all over the world, etc. So this was also creating a certain degree of dialogue among business schools and different stakeholders, which were extremely useful. So in a nutshell, a number of things. The question is to put some order, and in that I would echo what Stephanie was saying. The question is actually to bring them together in a way that makes sense. You can tell a narrative here, and it's a narrative that goes for the external world and also for the internal world. The internal being the same institution. So the institution actually can gain a little bit of a better identity when they receive a narrative that explains why they are doing what they're doing, and in that regard, what they want to accomplish and when they have to celebrate what they have accomplished. So all this actually has to be a little bit rounded together with accepting that from the very beginning, there's a lot of diversity and there's a considerable amount of complexity. But this is the road to to drive. So yeah,
that's great. Yeah, that's great, Alphonse. And I think it's interesting you're thinking and relies on what we see on the school, because in the end it's a journey, right? you need to celebrate every step. You also need to be ambitious about it, understanding this complexity, as you just mentioned. But like the journey itself, it's something to be celebrated. The reflection process that also happening all around, because again, it's a reflexive process in really understanding the context, where you are, the needs. And nowadays, the world is changing too much. The context also changed a lot with the changes in society. Yeah, as I just mentioned, like the past few years, what we passed through was really unimaginable from a couple of years in the past, let's say that. So it's also important to really keep this in mind, that it's always a journey, it's always a process that will lead us to this change and to this transformation, right?
True. There's a little bit of it. You made me think there's a little bit of an attitude here. It's a constant. There's a moving target. I mean, of course, if we look at percentages, we can say 50% of targets have been accomplished, 50% not yet, etc. That's one thing. But the other thing is to be constantly on the move, to have this kind of DNA well embedded in the school, so that the school has a reasonable mission, a mission that actually can be, let's say, fleshed out into certain things. Missions by itself don't tell much, but missions, when they are fleshed out in the whole structure, in the whole set of activities of an institution, then they're livable objects, something that actually you can look at and you can see that this is inspiring for the inside and for the outside.
It's great, yeah. And we'll continue our conversation also shifting to a specific and really important stakeholder that we have, that are our students. And I would do this question to Andrew. I know that BGA believes that schools also need to focus on the personal growth of the students to form the foundation of socially conscious and responsible leaders that will drive this change, that will really deliver and transform the society where they are. This also aligns on what we discussed around Prime, through the Prime Global Students, for example. In your perspective, what does it take to train this much needed leader to deal with societal challenge, and how do business schools contribute to this process?
So I think I'd start, Gustavo, by saying that last month I spoke at a conference with Lech Walesa in Poland, the legendary founder of Solidarity. And he was saying he'd like to see more business school students become leaders of countries, not just businesses, and that we shouldn't rely on the politicians to lead the world forward at this very difficult time. And he said very, very openly that the old world order is gone now, and we're in between world orders. And it's for the leaders of academia and the leaders of businesses to take over more than they do at the moment from the politicians, to lead the world to a good place. And so I thought that was a very perceptive and telling view, because it's not just about teaching profit and profit maximization. You've got to now have, in a very complicated world, an all-round balanced, hard skills, soft skills, socially aware leader. And so one of the challenges we go through with our business schools, because Amber and BGA are both accreditation brands, but they are also both membership brands for students and graduates. So we have 70,000 members who we get together and take the best practice from our business schools, which through BGA, the Business Graduates Association, we measure through our continuous impact model, where, to Stephanie's point, we advise the school and the student not to chase after some point of difference in all 17 SDGs, but focus on the ones that you as an individual, future leader, believe you can have the greatest impact on, and you as a school can have the greatest impact on. And then we share that findings. So each school fills in a continuous impact model, which is quite strongly based on the SDGs. And we give feedback on best practice from other schools and other students and graduates from around the world. So we share that knowledge in almost a continuous loop of learning and improvement. So a continuous loop for the school, in that we want their continuous impact model to get stronger and stronger in terms of its societal impact, and a continuous loop for the students, so that when they leave as a member of BGA and as a member of AMBER, as what will then be their management role, they're still influenced by us sharing the best practice from our business schools with not just the students who are members, but also the alumni. Because once you leave school or university, at the age of late 20s, early 30s, if it's a master's, you've got another 35 years of leadership. And we believe in such a complicated world now that you need just-in-time learning for that second half of your life, from 30 to 65, 70, whereby you're continuously being taught the latest best practice ideas from ourselves, from AACSB, from EFMD, and that those are shared with the students when they become managers and directors. So it's a continuous process, both for our schools and also our students and graduates.
That's great. And I think this, again, is also connected to a long-term perspective, because when we talk about alumni, they're influence other stakeholders, they're sharing this message, they're impacting different realities, and they are creating change. And it goes back also on what we talk about, why we teach and what we teach and how we teach, because it's also part of this process of transformation of its students and how they are pushing this forward and doing this transformation. Thanks, Andrew. We also put Omid on the table and the conversation to bring some Prime perspective for this discussion. We know that Prime is a great aggregator of different partners when discussing topics like the one that we're talking here today. And Prime now working with this in more than 15 years. Omid, how do you see the contribution of our community members and the impact that is generated on the more than, let's say, 3 million students that are connected with our signatories? And as I just talked a couple of minutes ago about Prime Global Students, that it's this network and connection with the students. So we have this immense impact on 3 million students that are related to our business schools or universities. How do you see the community contribution and the impact that is generated on those students?
I have the bounty and privilege to be new to Prime in a certain way, which always, it can be seen one or the other way. But I was always, in spirit and action, I would call myself, was always a Prime member. When I was, started here in 2003 at university, I was probably, running the first activities, innovating in a way to kind of bring these topics to the table in the field of teaching, the field of learning, also as an institution, where I tried to bring about some movement. But now that I see, it's like a déjà vu, right? As if I'm getting to know Prime. If Prime would be a person, is, sometimes you meet people you have never seen their faces, and you meet them and you see, hey, it's as if I know you since ever, right? This is kind of the feelings I have about Prime. So this is very, I just wanted to share that personal point. I think what I see from my lens with Prime, and I always felt it already early on, because, some dear colleagues who were very much involved and still are, like Thomas Dielich and others, is that it is a culture, as something has been cultivated in the way one talks about things, the way one treats each other, the way one discusses topics, which I find makes the big difference of what Prime is, and phenomenon of Prime, very much based on that. And that actually, you know, I find very encouraging and very good news, because if something has trickled down on the level of culture, then it has been internalized a lot differently beyond models and frameworks and, you know, programmatic topics. And that is something which I find is very distinct about Prime. Something which I find also is important here in connection with that foundational point is, you know, the way people, different stakeholders, as well as students at different institutions, which I got to know, and some of them I know for a long time, the way they listen to each other. Oftentimes I have the feeling that, you know, in many spaces where we are all working, we are talking at each other. And we forget that listening should, you know, should occupy the majority of the time, because there are many terms which we use, all of us, including myself. For example, the term transformation. What is actually transformation? How is it linked, for example, to the topic of purpose? That was, you know, the title of this session is Leadership with Purpose, Creating Social Impact. So how is, if you want to create impact, and you want to do it in a sustainable way, that impact must have been informed and processed in a way that allowed transformation. And transformation always means that the people who want to create impact are themselves open to change. Now, being open to change, you know, if you look at the definition of one definition of transformation, you can say, you know, it's a process of profound and radical change over time that orients an organization, an initiative, a movement, whatever you take, in a new direction, and takes it to an entirely different level of effectiveness. It's a little bit this, you know, metaphor of the caterpillar who turns into a butterfly, right? And it's really more than just saying some incremental changes or incremental improvements or just speeding up. It's really a change in a basic character, which with little or no resemblance with the past configuration or structure of that entity, that phenomenon which one is looking at, may it be Prime or any other institution or network or initiative or platform. And this made me think a lot, you know, it made me think what is required to allow for transformation, where I can see myself part of it, understanding that many things which I'm propagating, I might get a lot of agreement because people think that I'm an expert in something. But this is at the same time a fallacy, because at the same time, I'm reinforcing something which maybe I need to change about myself and my own understanding of it. And therefore, you know, if I call myself an expert, I do it with mixed feelings, right? Because on the one hand, yes, I hope that I've understood things which I can bring to the table to share in such a space or in other spaces or in my work. But at the same time, being on guard that I need to be open for change myself, my understanding, right? So that I don't happen to mislead with that my thoughts are not so coined in that I start misleading a discourse or a conversation. So being very aware and mindful about what we know, what we don't know, that we really make sure we have, do we listen to each other carefully? And I see that in the Prime space, I saw a lot of positive maturity in this sense, especially among young people. And I think that in general, our all our institutions are a little bit lagging behind our younger generations. I say very bluntly. It's good to, for example, reinforce this intergenerational discourse and make sure that there is learning happening from that. That comes a little bit too short oftentimes. And here I see that Prime with Prime Global Students is really taking this up, going into a very good direction. And thereby sometimes even turning things around where we can learn more from the young generations because they have a different way of looking into the future or on the future. And that kind of sparks maybe or an invitation to then also putting oneself also to test and one's own thinking and one's own understanding. So I'm trying to describe a little bit my observations, what I process when I deal with Prime and Prime people, folks and friends, and of course many other people even outside Prime, of course. But since you asked the question, I thought I answer it in a very genuine way. Thank you.
Thanks, Omid. And I think what you bring here, and I really like that you mentioned that if people that want to create impact, if they're really open to change, for example, and I think this also relates to a mindset shift in some way. I will, using this, I will also bring some questions that I'm getting from the audience here, and also following up what you just said in the first session, that we, quoting Einstein, of course, but that we cannot solve the problems with the same thinking that create them. And this for me opens two ways that I will explore in the question here. One is at individual level, and the other one is the institutional level. So in the individual level, I would like to address this question to Andrew. Andrew, how understanding the influence that you have, your organization have, and etc. How do you see and how do you use this institutional or individual influence to guide towards the challenge of mindset, this mindset that got us here, to promote this mindset shift that is really important to do this transformation, the societal change, and the impact that we want to generate?
And I can only talk, Gustavo, about the students that I see at our schools. And I think the mindset is pretty strong. The willingness and acceptance that, you know, because it is their world for the future and that it's in their interest to make the world a better place. I think the mindset is there. It's all about making sure the right learning is getting into the schools and into the students. The biggest hurdle that's coming up now, which wasn't there 5 years ago, is some of the world's geopolitical problems, where we're getting a lot more military conflict and we're getting high inflation, high energy prices. There are other things competing for a manager's time and attention. And I think that's the thing that we've got to do, that most importantly, we've got to keep the environment, sustainability, responsible management at the top of the agenda when these students are going back into the businesses as managers and directors and are having to fight on other different fronts, dealing with other problems at the same time. So I think there's a really big role for the school and for us as accreditation organizations, the three of us who are with you today, to keep things top of mind with the student, share the best practice from schools, and share amongst the students and graduates themselves what they've gone back to do inside their own companies and startups as best practice. It's all about global sharing of knowledge.
That's great, and I think it also brings to me the word of collaboration and cooperation and collective effort to look to the same challenge that we face. And I will use this also for pose a different question on it, and I will address this to Alphonse. Because also on the Q&A here, people are sharing about the collaboration, the need of collaboration, especially because the mindset that guided us here is the one that connected to the challenge and the issues that we're facing as a society. So we need to think, and as you mentioned, it's really important to understand the context that you are when you're talking about the societal impact, but it's also important to tell a collective story, like to understand that we have some problems and issues that are impacting all of us. So that's why collaboration is important in different levels, like between business schools, between academia, between networks, and etc. Talking about an accreditation perspective, for example, how do we ensure that our solutions and the solutions that accreditation ecosystem is creating now, pushing societal impact and all the discussions that we have, aren't modeled in the same logic that brought us here, like that we're looking for collaborative efforts to transform and to really deliver this change?
Well, I'm not sure whether we could define exactly what brought us here as a sort of a kind of mindset, a unique mindset. Probably it's a multiple mindsets that brought us here, and part of these mindsets are still useful to get us out here. But anyway, your question is about the collaboration, I understand, and well, collaboration is indeed, it's the word of the game. And I was reading one of the questions, someone was saying, well, all this is very fine, but when you start connecting the dots, let's say students' education, which is critical, and I do understand that this is the future agents of change, and probably the ones who are more avid and more curious, actually, what can we do here? This is our world. How can we respond, and how can we make a difference out of it? Not for us, for them. So actually, if this is the motivation, how to make sure that we tap into this motivation? Someone mentioned maybe we should be looking at the faculty. Maybe we should be looking at the learning methods. Maybe you should be looking at what do we teach. Maybe we should be opening up the space for different kind of experiences. So actually, students feel the challenge and actually come out with good responses to these challenges. So in this regard, collaboration means not just bringing together different kind of mindset, but also, and it's not co-creation really the word, it's understanding there are different positions around the same very object, and we have to be able to manage that. And from a standpoint of accreditation, what we want to do is to offer the possibility for the school to reflect on what they do according to a specific framework. So if I go back to the EQUIS, for example, I'm using just EQUIS, not EQUIS core thing is the strategy. So what's your strategy? And then we will talk about the rest. So the question is, how can you help you to reflect on all this? That's one thing. And the second is really that more and more we're asking schools, given all that, how can you make sure that you are responding adequately to the global challenges? Answer that. I mean, it's your context, it's your school, it's your specific world. We agree with that. But to what extent you're making sure that the global challenges are tainting whatever you're doing? And in this regard, we can go as down as to look into, let's say, a core course curricula and say, where is this? How can I see it here? So all this, so it's not one solution, it's not one way. Again, maybe it's really a way of looking at things. And someone actually in the question said, shouldn't be making decisions using the sustainability mindset. That's good. That's a possibility. So actually look at the courses and say, what if constantly, so that students, to the end, students actually are, let's say, invited to think differently. But if we don't offer students that possibility, that we are missing the point really. So long question for a very complex, long answer for a very complex question. We could go on and on about that. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Alphonse. And I think this is the role of sessions like this one, is just popping more questions in people's minds so we can keep reflecting and digesting, right, the session, going back, the talk with others, and really continue the conversation that we were starting here. So it's really good to bring this perspective. I will align with this topic about what we can do and how do we do, and also how can we learn from each other. Stefan, I will bring to you also a question here from the audience. Like when prioritizing strategic formulation, for example, how do we benchmark, or how do we monitor, or how do we, the way that we are performing societal impact, how do we compare with others and learn from each other's? What is the importance of benchmarking on this context?
That's a good question. I saw that question come in. I guess I have a little bit of a different take on the term benchmarking. So benchmark to me implies that there's a norm that you should be striving for. So there's two ways you can look at benchmarking. That's one way. The other is simply to compare yourself to others. And if you're both working in the same area, are you doing more? Are you being more impactful than the other school? And so I don't really think benchmarking is key in this space. I don't think it's about competition. I don't think it's about comparing what you're doing to somebody else, what they're doing. I think we all should be focused on, Alphonse said this really nicely in his opening, what are our resources? What is a given school's resources? What is their mission? What is their strategy? What is it they intend to achieve, given their context and their culture and their environment and all those other things? So I think what's important is that a school know what it is they want to do. Like that's your essential starting point. What is it you want to do? What impact do you want to make? And by the way, impact doesn't happen overnight. Impact is a long-term idea. So impact, just because you did something doesn't mean you had impact. Those are outputs. Outputs lead to outcomes. And ultimately, over time, you can start talking about how those lead to impact. But it, just doing something doesn't mean you had impact. So it's the collective efforts that lead to impact over time. But I'm not a fan of benchmarking. I don't think that's what this is about. I think it is up to each school to deeply reflect on what they desire to accomplish over time. And then the second thing is to find others who are interested in the same thing that you're interested in. And that is where those of us on this call have platforms. We all have very, very important, big platforms where we can convene like minds, people who are interested in the same areas. And that's really the key to amplifying efforts. So it starts with, a school, then you can get schools together. I'm talking about schools because as an accreditor, that's the audience I'm thinking about. Then you convene those people along with businesses. So it's not just education that's going to solve these problems. Alphonse also talked about multi-stakeholder approach, 100% right. This is multiple stakeholders who have to be involved, but business schools need to be at the table. They need to be at the table, not competing with each other, working together, working at the meta level. That's where we ultimately want to go. Right now, we're working at a mesa or a midline level. We need to be working at a meta level, an ecosystem level, to be able to start to really move the needle. Now, this is all easy to say. It's easy for us to say these things on a 1-hour webinar. The real trick is to sustain our efforts over time. And somebody did ask in the questions, by the way, really good questions, great conversation. How do we keep this alive? How do we keep the spirit of this alive? You keep it alive by continuing to be committed to it. So this is not a flash in the pan. This is not something that's a fad. It's not something we're going to do for 2 years and then now we're on to something else. We are committed to making a better world. And we make a better world by staying committed, staying focused, bringing multi-stakeholders together and working together. And then the last thing I'll just say is every great social movement starts with young people. And fortunately, somebody on the call said, I think it was Omid that said this, the young people are actually leading with purpose. I believe that's true. the young people will take up the mantle of this. I say young people, that makes me sound old, but that's really our hope. Our hope is that the people who are in college today, or even before college, that they're going to come up through a world where they desire to continue this purpose-driven life. And they use their business education experience for making the world better. So you can be a great technician, business technician. I can be a great accountant, but also we want to make a difference in the world. So that's a kind of, again, a long answer. And I was trying to hit on several things that were mentioned in the chat to bring those ideas together. But I'm excited for where we're going. I'm not pessimistic. I'm not afraid. I'm excited. And it's going to take people who continue to be committed, like those people on this call are committed, and those of you in the audience, I can see the commitment that's showing up in your conversations as well. And then that coupled with fire in the belly, as we would say in some parts of the world, from our young people, that's how we keep it going.
It's great. That's great. And I think it's interesting to see everyone here speaking. I think we're getting a common message on the discussion, really understanding what you want, how to impact, and what you want to do, how to create, and really looking forward to the future. And I think all the platforms we're here, like even accreditations and or even Prime, etc. We are here collaborating with the same goal, really pushing society forward and really looking to the global challenge and issues that we have. Because in the end, our students are there. They're there to support this change and of course, deliver this change and this transformation. And on that sense, I also would like to bring to Andrew and Omid a question, especially related to what Andrew just spoke it, and I think a couple of minutes ago, when you mentioned, Andrew, about, for example, the preparing business school students to become leaders from countries and not just business, and this can really support we push forward and to solve and collaborate to the challenge. I see some people are mentioning here, for example, a low carbon society, that we have challenges and issues to deal with there. How can we then broaden our educational strategy to produce business leaders? I'd not use the word produce, but like to enable business leaders who can lead nations and as well also contribute to resolution of geopolitical issues, environmental issues, and global peace, which is also part of the SDGs discussion. How do we see that this is something that we as business school, we need to rethink what we're teaching, how we're teaching, or this is part of the transformation that the society is passing through? What is your vision about this?
So you're asking me, Gustavo? Yeah.
Yes.
It's very interesting. As the world is becoming more geopolitically uncertain and complex, I'm starting to have conversations with deans. In fact, I had some in France last week, where the feeling that teaching geopolitics, giving people a good oversight, a good overview of global geopolitics and understanding of that is going to become important as a subject in its own right. The real challenge here is with more and more content needed to keep a business degree, undergraduate or master's, current and topical. How do you keep fitting more into the curricula when you can't increase the amount of time spent? So we're finding more and more subjects, whether it's digital marketing, AI, geopolitics, need to be covered to make a leader a good all-round manager leaving business school or university. But you can't extend the length of the degree. In fact, if anything, there's pressure from companies and from individuals to shorten some degree programs. So how do you put more in with less? But I think giving people an overview of geopolitics and letting them still travel. I know there is a dilemma that universities should cut down their carbon footprint by traveling yet less, but you've got a dilemma of students. If you want to collaborate, much of that needs to be face-to-face. You're building relationships. So both students being able to travel and faculty being able to travel is important. So that's something else that's got to be put in the right balance.
That's great. Yes, yes. In the end, the in-person relations as a complementary way of the online interactions, it's also part of this knowledge building process. And I think we, as I just said, we need to find this balance in everything we talk. I know we have like a lot of questions coming up on the chat, but also on the Q&A space. But we need to go to an end. We have a full agenda during the day for different activities. I really encourage you all to keep continuous discussion through the chat and the lobby and all the networking spaces. So I will pose my last question to all of you. It's a concluding remark, and it's really my intention is really to bring like a call to action on this. So for each of you, what would you say to your stakeholders, our stakeholders, our audience that are here? Many of your stakeholders are here, members of the responsible management education ecosystem. What actions do we need to reach the next level in generating societal impact and really contributing to a sustainable transformation of society? So this is also a concluding remarks from each of you. So also feel free to bring your final comments about our discussion. So I will start with Omid, I guess. So it's the last one in my screen here. So Omid, please.
Sure. So short and crispy, right? So what is an action to which I would suggest to look into is, you know, as we said earlier, first of all, it's not about the one action, right? We're talking about many different activities. And if I would have to choose, I therefore would suggest for educational institutions, for universities, to look at the topic of the question of how do we align our activities to become more effective in what we do. And this topic of alignment is extremely important because you don't need to align anything if there is no diversity. We know that our universities is full of diversity, right? So if there is diversity, then it's a strategic imperative at some point to say, what is actually our activity system look like? Where do we want to go? What is our contribution to making the world a better place? And how can we align our activities, our people, our processes, our technologies, or whatever we do in such a way that we can create coherence, which in turn make us more effective in what we do. Even in the ecosystem of universities, this kind of alignment can be very useful and is important, you know, where business schools collaborate with each other and reinforce their contributions. And I would also say extend it also into other stakeholders in the overall system, and that is businesses, because business schools, at least from a perspective of Prime, looking at management education, this collaboration between business school and business, without it, we wouldn't be able to be, you know, live up to the formula 1 and 1 is 3. And that's something which we need to do.
Great. Thank you, Omid. Stephanie.
Keeping it short and pithy, I would say 3 things. Have courage. This is a time for courage. Persevere. That means just stick with it. And the last thing is think about collaboration, not competition. I think that's the key. Seek ways to collaborate.
Thank you, Stephanie. Andrew.
I was new to this industry 11 years ago. I came from the world of multinational director of a big travel company and then a big financial services company. And I must congratulate you and encourage you to use your greatest strength as an industry, which is collaboration. This is the most collaborative industry on a worldwide scale I've ever seen. And I think if you've been in it a long time, you don't appreciate the joy and strength of it because you don't realize how narrow-minded and competitive other industries are. So my message is keep the collaboration going, keep the ideas sharing going on a local as well as global basis, because I think the world of business schools has one of the best chances to make the biggest impact here of any industry of all.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Alphonse.
My 4 things. First one is in Latin. It says magis. It means more, simply more, do more. The second is persistence. So it's echoing. This is not a one-day game, 1-hour game. It requires persistence. And the third thing actually is combination. I mean, we do 2 things right. Okay, we educate students, so concentrate on that. Concentrate on the education. This is where we can make a real difference here. And the second one is on research. Conduct the right kind of research, the one that actually can help people to think better, to be better educated, and to have a better world better word to the world of these things.
Thank you, Alphonse. Well, so with all those concluding remarks, I think we will end this panel, appreciating your participation and engagement, all the questions and discussions on the chat. I'm really, I couldn't keep it up. So a lot of things going on. I hope to see it later on it. A lot of good stories, examples, and debates. So this is really great and insightful. Thanks again for our panelists for being here, for committing with this session, and also for leading the different activities and projects, initiatives that you're leading, because I think it's really important and really will support the RME ecosystem to reach to a next level, to generate more and more impact, and keep going, keep doing, as we go forward to this so much needed change in the society. To the audience, thank you for participating on the session. We're concluding here, so please return to the Zoom lobby. You can join the next session. You can explore the expo or network with other attendees. As you saw, this was recorded, so this will be available in a couple of hours, also on the platform. So you can also feel free to watch later on and also share with your colleagues. So thanks, everyone. Have a good day and enjoy the rest of Global Forum. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.